Hi, I'm Erin Leach, and you're listening to the In the Middle of It podcast. This is a space for the ambitious woman navigating the beautiful, messy intersection of motherhood, business, and spirituality. We're here to get real about what it actually looks like to build a life that feels aligned from the inside out while moving through the seasons that stretch and shape you into the best version of yourself. So, whether you're in a season of high speed growth or quiet reflection, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Let's get ready for this week's episode.
Hey, friend. Welcome back to In the Middle of It. Today, I want to talk about something that I have thought about a lot for a long time. First, a question for you. Have you ever felt like there's something that you really, really want to do, but you're putting it off because you just feel like it's going to take too long? Like you're going to tell yourself to see any progress or to hit that milestone, like it's probably going to take me like 6 months to do that. And that feels like forever. But then at the same time, suddenly 6 months flies by, anyways, and you're still hemming and hawing about this thing. So, whether it's starting a project, working on mindset stuff, or starting a new business, new routine, even going to therapy, whatever it is, sometimes there's that voice that creeps in that just says it's going to take too long. But here's the truth. Hopefully you're ready to hear this if you're listening to this episode. But that time is going to pass anyways. No matter what, 6 months from now is going to come, whether you start or not. So why not use that time for something that helps you grow, even if it's just by 1%? Isn't that still worth the effort? This idea really first hit home for me during one of the hardest seasons of my life, if not the actual hardest season of my life, my whole postpartum journey after Leon was born. And I've talked a little bit about this before, but I struggled a lot, to say the least. Any existing mental health challenge that I had got louder, way louder. Anxiety and intrusive thoughts, definitely emotion dysregulation and the rage that came from that and shame, just all of the things. And I felt like just everything was so magnified, and I felt like I was drowning in it all, and I just could not even get my head above water for more than a day. And I loved being Leon's mom, don't get me wrong, and I loved being able to be home with him and the flexibility that entrepreneurship provided me as a mom. But I also was really struggling with the fact that I did not recognize myself. I missed the version of me that was ambitious and driven, the go-getter who could dream and make things happen. And not to say that that part of me was gone, but it was definitely overshadowed by motherhood, because then suddenly I was home all day. I am the default parent just because I do have that level of flexibility, thankfully, that I am very grateful for. And at the time, just because of life circumstances and stuff, no fault to anybody at all, but I didn't have the support system that I really needed at the time. And there were just like so many other things that came into play that really affected me mentally and emotionally through this process, especially once Scott went back to work and loved the adjustment. Things get a little hairy for a while. So finally, when Leon was about 3 or 4 months old, when I finally hit a point where I just couldn't keep going on like that, there were some really big things that were happening, and I could just start to see the serious toll that it was taking on, obviously, me as a person, but also my husband and Leon, even as a tiny little baby. And the dogs, everybody was being affected. And that just did not sit well with me at all, knowing that. And I knew that something had to change or I was going to lose it all, or I was very, very afraid that I would lose it all. So I finally chatted with Scott about it all. And thankfully, right before this revelation, I guess, a friend had told me about the day hospital program at Women and Infants in Providence. And honestly, shout out to you, Courtney. I hope you listen to this because I am forever in debt to that one little conversation that we had at my then photo studio that led us to this conversation about the day hospital program. And because of that program, like, not to be dramatic, but I feel like it saved my life, my marriage, and then ripple effect wise, my business, our family. Like, it's exactly what I needed in that moment. So I'm so, so glad for that resource. But in the moment when I went there, you had to do like an intake interview kind of a thing. And the therapist that I was doing this intake with said, yeah, she's telling me about the program and that it's Monday through Friday, about like 9 to 2 ish for 3 weeks is the usual, or maybe more if needed. And my first reaction was, uh, that's a long time. Those are long days. And I just could not fathom the whole situation. Leon napping away from home, nursing and pumping, and just all of the things. It was just really overwhelming to think about doing that. But I knew I needed to do this. I knew I needed this program. So I started. I figured 3 or 4 weeks isn't really that bad in the grand scheme of things. I can do this. I can do it and I will do it. I need to do it. So I actually did end up doing a lot of the things in that time that I never thought would be possible. Getting out of the house with Leon super early in the morning, getting all packed up for a whole day and being prepared for whatever could possibly happen, diaper leaks and all of the things. Getting him to nap in a super bright room with a dozen different people talking, and then nursing and pumping throughout all of it, let alone any of the inner work that I began to do as well. It was a very transformative experience on many levels. And in that time at the day hospital, I got diagnosed with OCD as well, which at the time was a little shocking. But then the more that I learned about OCD and the more I reflected back on my life, it was kind of comical because I'm like, I've had this forever. This has just been a thing. Much like ADHD, I was diagnosed with ADHD at 28. And that was, again, just like oh, so that explains it. Okay. And we can talk about diagnoses and stuff on another episode. But with this diagnosis of OCD, I was offered another place in the other outpatient program they have focused on exposure therapy for OCD specifically. And again, they're telling me about the program and the logistics of it, but also like the content and everything. And the content was fine, but logistically, there were significantly less resources I was going to have at my fingertips. Even just like literally a fridge in the room. There was no fridge in the room. We were literally just in the behavioral health conference room. So, like, okay, that's fine. Okay. And then they said it's 3 days a week, shorter days. Okay, cool. Awesome. For 8 weeks. Okay, cool. Awesome. And it took me a really long time to digest that and come to terms with it. And it was literally the only thing stopping me from joining that program. because it just felt like I can't commit to that. That is way too long. Next thing you know, it's going to be March, April, whatever it was. And Leon's going to be however old. He was 7 or 8 months or something like that. And like just all of it. Like I just couldn't even wrap my head around doing it. But I look back on my experience with the day hospital and I reflected on what was most important for our family and me just as a person at that moment. And that's when the full thought finally came in that, well, that time is going to pass anyways. So 8 weeks from now, I can either be in a better place, even slightly, or I can still just be right here, still struggling. So eventually, spoiler alert, as you can imagine, I did end up doing the OCD IOP, they called it, intensive outpatient program. So did that for 8 weeks and yet again tackled more things that I thought I was going to be incapable of. Still getting out of the house early, taking care of him without the assistance of any of the nursery or the resources that I had with the day hospital. And again, all of that aside from fully participating in the exposures, which were quite challenging at times, and flipping OCD on its figurative head and working on new thought patterns. And I just am forever grateful for both of those programs because that was the start of so many other things for me and gave me access to the resources that I really needed. Being able to work with someone really closely daily and figure out some medication that would help me get through this phase of life, which I'm still on now because it really has been a drastic improvement in my life. And then also the therapist that I have now that they referred me to, she is wonderful and phenomenal. She's a tough cookie, but it's what I need right now. And I wouldn't be connected with her if I didn't take the leap and just say, okay, well, yes, these are really long time commitments. These are big commitments, but it's worth it. Even if I get like partial benefit out of the programs, the time will have been worth it. And finally, then a third time, I joined another group that my therapist referred me to, was a DBT program. DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. And if you've ever heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, it's just a different type of therapy, basically, with different core components to it, and mostly directed towards emotion regulation, which is really at the core what I need to work on. And I say that in the present tense very intentionally. So my therapist knew about this program, recommended that I look into it. I did the intake interview and all of that again. And yet again, she told me that the program was every Wednesday evening for 8 months. And I said, oh, but yet again, the same thought ran through my mind that, I mean, these 8 months are going to come and go, whether I do the work or not. And I knew that DBT was going to be important for me to better regulate my emotions. Just seeing already the impact that it had had just from the little bit that I had learned in the day hospital program and the OCD program. So, yes, again, spoiler alert, I joined the group. Shocker. And that program has changed so much for me. Obviously, being in that program wouldn't be possible if I hadn't made the decision to just start the day hospital in the first place. It's just so interesting to me to look back and see all the connections and all of the decisions that I have made, even just in this little frame of time. But now, almost 2 years later, I'm calmer, more grounded, and more confident in handling my OCD for sure. I'm less rigid in lots of ways, still working on it in many other ways. But in general, I just feel a lot freer because also a great benefit of all of this work that I've done, and this again could be its own episode, is that I have realized, thankfully, that this is all just mental health challenges. And I had been living with a lot of this for so long, especially the emotion dysregulation and OCD, ADHD, all of the symptoms that come with all of that, that it just felt like it was me. Okay, well, this must just be how I am. This is just Erin, I guess. And I think probably like one of the most beautiful things to come out of all of this is that I have realized that no, no, it is not about me at all. This is not my identity. I am not, all the things that I would say to myself, an angry psycho or just like super particular or any of the things that I could pick on that came from these mental illnesses. I just made them about myself because I didn't understand them. I didn't have the diagnoses. And what a relief it has been to realize that it's not about me. And I have the resources now to help me deal with all of it. And just to return to the whole point of this episode is that I would not be in this place if I hadn't just made the decision to say, okay, 3 weeks every day feels like a lot, but I can do that for myself and for my family, for my son, for our future children, for everybody around me too, who sometimes walks on eggshells around me. I would not be here right now. I probably wouldn't be making, well, I obviously wouldn't be making this particular episode, but who knows if I would be making this podcast at all. So you never know what is on the other side of what might feel like a small decision, like in the moment, deciding whether or not to start the day hospital program. It felt like a big decision, but also at the time, it didn't feel as huge as it actually ended up being for me and for my family. So you just never know what you could be holding back on by waiting or pushing off doing whatever it is that you're feeling called to do. You never know where it could go. So, yes, moral of the story, that lesson that the time will pass anyway has stayed with me ever since. And it's become one of those guiding principles that I come back to very often, way more often than I thought that I ever would in motherhood or in business, personal growth. Like it's all the same at this point. And you can either look up 6 months from now wishing that you had started, or you can look back proud of how far you've come. Even 1% is still better. Even if you've only taken one small step today, that's still some kind of forward motion. It still matters. And you just never know where it's going to lead. And I think about how often we hold ourselves back because we're waiting for the perfect time, the perfect plan, or whatever. But there really never is a perfect time to do pretty much anything. Like if you're thinking about starting a family, nope, never a perfect time. Never a perfect time to have another baby, anything like that. Never the perfect time to start a business. There's never the perfect time to leave your job and go full-time entrepreneurship. There's never the perfect time, the perfect Monday, the perfect New Year's to start that workout routine or to start that new dietary lifestyle. There's never the perfect time. Another one of my favorite thoughts is that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time to plant a tree is today. You don't need to know every step or every detail. You just need to do something today. Make the decision to start. And, maybe it's a big decision like committing to a long program of some kind of sort, or maybe it's a big financial decision, but any kind of decision, any kind of forward momentum is still something, even if all you're doing is researching a new career, looking into it a little bit. Like, the universe is going to see those behaviors, it's going to see that you're taking some kind of inspired action and start leading you on the path to more clarity around what your next move is. You don't even have to know your end goal, your end destination, but if there is something that's been tugging at you lately, something that you've been overthinking or putting off, this is your reminder that you do not need to have it all figured out. You are capable of way more than you think you are. And if you don't end up being quote unquote capable in the moment, you're going to figure it out still. You're going to develop new skills. You're going to develop new resilience in the same way that I did through all of those programs. So start in any way that you can, whatever feels manageable right now in this moment for you. Send the email, sign up for the program, reach out for support, write the first paragraph of your book, take the first walk, anything, because 6 months from now, you're either going to be really glad you started, which is what I hope ends up happening, or you're still going to be wondering what would have happened if you had. And look, even if it doesn't unfold exactly how you imagined, you're still going to gain something no matter what. It's never going to be a quote unquote failure. There's going to be some kind of lesson to learn within it. There's some kind of takeaway with anything that you do. You're going to learn something new about yourself. You're going to have more like data, so to speak, a new experience, a deeper sense of who you are and what you want. And that is always worth it. The time is going to pass anyway. Plant your tree today. Maybe tomorrow, depending on when you're listening to this. But plant your tree, please. Your metaphorical tree. Spend your time on something that moves you closer to the life that you want. I know this conversation has gone in many different ways, but to wrap things up, I would really love to know if this conversation has hit home for you in some way. Share a screenshot of where you're listening. Tag me at I am Erin Leach. Send me a DM. Let me know what resonated with you. I really do want to know. Strike up that conversation with you and even talk through the next steps of something that you're considering doing. And if you found this episode helpful, please take a second to follow the show. Leave a quick rating or review. It helps other women find these conversations and join our growing community. So until next time, I'm Erin Leach, reminding you that you don't need the perfect plan or the perfect timing. You just need to take the leap and begin. We'll see you soon.